Hey there, Nick here. In this video, we're going to go over how to create read-only variables in Bash, and we're going to do it in a couple of different ways, such as creating variables inside of a function, outside of a function, and then also making things POSIX compliant in case you need maximum shell compatibility. So check it out. I've got this little demo script here, and this is going to cover the use case of creating locally scoped variables that are read-only or not. By the way, it is worth pointing out that the local keyword is Bash specific. So if you're trying to use maximum compatibility with, POSIX compliant shell, then you're not going to be able to use this keyword, but that's independent of read-only or not. We're going to go over some options for that later. But in any case, yeah, here I have two little functions named Immutable, and Immutable just means that something can't be changed. And of course, you can change the names of these functions and variables to be whatever you want. That's only for the sake of this demo script here. But if you try to run it, notice here on line 18, we do get an error here saying that this variable is a read-only variable. And yeah, in this case, we have status set depending, and we have the -r flag on this, which is going to make it read-only. That's the only difference between this top function over here. And when we try to reassign the value of a variable, such as setting it to be completed, when it's read-only, then yep, Bash is going to yell at us in a good way. So you might be wondering, right, why? Why would you ever want to make a variable read-only? And I think there's a couple of different reasons. And number one is showing the intent of your code. So let's say I have a much larger shell script here, whether or not you wrote it isn't important. It's really nice to know as a reader and writer of the code itself to be like, oh, this is a read-only variable, meaning, when I look at this variable being defined depending, I know for a fact that later on in the script, this is not going to be changed to another value. Because if you did, maybe by accident, then the shell interpreter here, Bash in this case, is going to yell at us. And just as a human level, you just know the intent that this is meant to be read-only. So it's really good for use cases like that. But, let's say now that you want to have a read-only variable that's defined outside of a function. So there's a couple of different ways to define variables overall, right? We can do something like hello world here, and then we can just echo out hello, just like this. And I'm also just going to exit out early just so we don't need to look at the output of other stuff. But if we take a look here, we can see we have hello world, we echo it out, and we're out of the script, right? And we can also redefine this variable to be, something else, right? For example, something else. And now we would expect that something else gets echoed over here. And that's exactly what happens here, right? Defining a variable that isn't read-only. There's another way we can define variables too, and this is also Bash specific or compatible shells. It's not going to be POSIX compliant, but we can use a declare keyword here, right? And that's totally fine. We can mix it and match it. It doesn't really matter. This is also going to be completely fine here too. But there is a nice benefit of using declare instead of, not putting anything, in that you can just declare a value to be, or a variable to be read-only with the -r flag. So now if you run this one, we're going to get the same type of error that we got before. Of course, now it's on a different line, different variable name, but this is a read-only variable that we're trying to redefine here. So we get a very similar type of error. And if we try to just run it like this, then it's going to work just fine here because we're not trying to assign a different value there, and we are good to go. But yeah, let's say now that you just need to work with POSIX compliant shell. Using Bash is just not an option. So using things like pipe fail and locally scoped variables and other Bash specifics aren't going to work. So what could you do? Well, you can continue to just do this, right? And this is going to work completely fine if you're just using shell instead of Bash. So let's do that here. And by the way, pipe fail isn't going to work with shell. So let me just comment that out for now. Other stuff doesn't matter because we exited out the script here. But if you run this one, this is totally fine. We can define a variable in POSIX compliant shell. We can redefine it to be a different value here. But yeah, let's say that we want to make it read-only. Well, this is going to be POSIX compliant here just by using the read-only keyword here. And now when you run the script here, it is going to be like, well, nope, sorry, hello is read-only. We actually can't redefine it to be something else. And if we just, do this, then it is going to work here. Nice. So yeah, if you need maximum compatibility, then I would suggest using read-only. And in some cases, using read-only is pretty nice because it is a little bit easier to know what's happening here if you don't know what -r means, right? Read-only, you just look at that and it's like, oh, a read-only variable, totally fine. But I will say usually in practice, 99% of the time I am using Bash. So of course you can still use read-only with Bash too, right? There's no nothing against that. So, if I rerun this one out, we get the same type of issue here because it's read-only. And of course it's still going to work like this. But I oftentimes will use declare -r instead of read-only just because I tend to use declare for other things as well. So I've done videos in the past around creating associative arrays in Bash, which also isn't going to be POSIX compliant, but in that case you are using declare and then -a and then, defining your associative array there. So I don't know, at least for me, like my mental map in my mind, it's kind of nice to not even think really too much about the read-only keyword. And it's like, oh, I can declare an associative array with declare, or I can make it read-only. And there's also other flags you can do as well. But yeah, that's kind of why I do stick to using declare-r if I want to do read-only. It also just matches local-r here, and I find that to be a nice thing to align. Now, it is worth pointing out too that there is one more thing to think about when you're declaring read-only variables. For example, if you try to unset a variable, for example, unset hello here, then this is going to fail here, saying that you can't unset a read-only variable. But if this were to be set like this, not read-only, now we're going to get a different type of error here, an unbound variable, because no unset is actually protecting us from trying to echo out a variable that doesn't exist because it's been unset. So at this point, it's like basically undefined, right? It's not even as if it were defined, and we get that error here thanks to no unset. These are just some subtle things to be aware of, right? Because unsetting the variable is technically changing it, so that's why we can't do declare-r or read-only. And also this unset functionality works the same here. Like if we try to unset status, it is also going to fail here. So if I go and revert this back to how it was before, and we try to unset status here and rerun this, then we are going to get the unset error message here, even before we try to even redefine it, because yeah, we have all sorts of things protecting us up here. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. I'll do my best to answer all of them. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up because it really does help a lot. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.